The Republic of South Africa has brought allegations against Israel, claiming violations of the Genocide Convention in connection with its actions in Gaza. Israel vehemently rejects these accusations, setting the stage for a contentious legal battle. In a recent order dated January 26, 2024, the ICJ responded to South Africa's plea for interim relief following an attack on Israel in October 2023. The court recalled the events, including hostage-taking and loss of life, as well as the resulting human suffering and damage in Gaza. The ICJ has issued a series of provisional measures that are legally binding on Israel. These include the obligation for Israel to prevent acts prohibited in the Genocide Convention, ensure its military forces refrain from specific acts, and take immediate steps for humanitarian relief in Gaza. The court also highlighted the importance of preventing the destruction of evidence related to the allegations. Crucially, the court has mandated Israel to submit a report within 1 month detailing the measures taken to comply with its order. It's important to note that at this stage, the ICJ has not determined whether genocide has occurred or if it has jurisdiction over the case. Despite South Africa's request for a ceasefire, the court did not issue such an order. Additionally, it deviated from some of the specific language and content proposed by South Africa in its requests. The International Court of Justice sparks strong reactions from the Israeli government. The Israeli government is slamming the recent decision by the International Court of Justice, calling it libelous and challenging its right to defend against terrorism. Pro-Israel lawmakers in the United States also voiced disagreement with the ruling, despite the court not making a final determination on the genocide claim. 15 out of 17 judges acknowledged plausibility in South Africa's allegations, prompting the court to call on Israel to take measures preventing genocide, including avoiding harm to Gazans. Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, vehemently rejected the genocide charge, emphasizing their conflict is solely against Hamas, not Palestinian civilians. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant accused the court of overstepping its jurisdiction. The ruling, although it might have minimal impact on the ongoing war, is drawing attention to the question of whether Israel is committing genocide. Experts suggest this decision is part of what they call lawfare against Israel by its enemies. There's even speculation that Iran might be behind South Africa's case at the ICJ. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates in Palestine has welcomed the ICJ ruling, considering it an important reminder that no state is exempt from the law. Foreign Minister Riyad Malikai emphasized that Israel failed to convince the court that it wasn't violating the 1948 Genocide Convention. According to Malikai, the ICJ judges saw through what he called Israel's politicization, deflection, and outright lies. They assessed the facts and the law and ordered provisional measures that recognized the gravity of the situation on the ground and the veracity of South Africa's application, Minister Malikai stated. Palestine calls on all states to ensure respect for the order of the International Court of Justice, including Israel. These were the minister's closing remarks. Hamas, the militant group, has lauded the court's ruling, describing it as important and claiming it contributes to isolating Israel. In a statement, Hamas expressed satisfaction with the decision, emphasizing that it exposes what they perceive as Israel's crimes in Gaza. The South African government is celebrating the court's ruling, labeling it a decisive victory for international law. Officials expressed hope that Israel would not obstruct the implementation of the court's orders, emphasizing the significance of this decision in the pursuit of justice for the Palestinian people. South Africa pledged to continue advocating for the rights of Palestinians within global institutions. The ruling is seen as a major milestone, marking a step forward in the ongoing efforts to address the situation in Gaza. Naledi Pandor, South Africa's Minister of International Relations, spoke outside the ICJ headquarters in The Hague. She asserted that, according to the court's orders, Israel would have to halt the fighting in Gaza for aid and water provisions to be feasible. How do you provide aid and water without a ceasefire? Pandor questioned, suggesting that a ceasefire is implied in the court's order. The White House wasted no time addressing the court's ruling, with the National Security Council's John Kirby stating that it aligns with much of the approach the U.S. has taken with Israel. U.S. lawmakers also weighed in on the ICJ decision, denouncing the case as a whole. Representative Chris Smith labeled it false and dangerous, emphasizing the need to uphold Israel's right to exist against attempts to delegitimize the nation. Representative Brad Sherman called South Africa's claim absurd, highlighting that accusations of genocide against Israel distort the memory of real genocides. Representative Kathy Manning expressed disappointment in the ICJ for not dismissing what she called South Africa's groundless case. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCall criticized the court for not rejecting all of South Africa's claims, branding them meritless and suggesting political motivations tied to South Africa's connections with Hamas, Iran, Russia, and China. In the aftermath of the International Court of Justice's ruling, reactions are pouring in from around the globe. These reactions showcase a diverse range of perspectives. Qatar has welcomed the interim ruling, urging Israel to adopt all necessary measures to cease acts under the Genocide Convention in its Gaza conflict. In a statement, Qatar hailed the decision as a humanitarian victory, emphasizing its significance for the rule of law and international justice. Egypt, on the other hand, expressed anticipation for the ICJ to demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, citing similar rulings in past cases. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stressed the importance of respecting and implementing the court's decisions. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan seems to support the recent court decision. He's all for it and hopes it'll finally stop the attacks on civilians. Erdogan called the ruling valuable and stressed how crucial it is to put an end to Israel's actions against vulnerable populations. As global responses continue to unfold, Saudi Arabia has expressed approval for the emergency measures recommended by the ICJ. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs reiterated its rejection of the Israeli occupation's practices and violations of the UN Convention on Genocide. However, the UK, while respecting the ICJ's role and independence, has raised considerable concerns about the case, deeming it unhelpful in achieving a sustainable ceasefire. A spokesperson emphasized that Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas and argued that Israel's actions in Gaza do not align with the definition of genocide. The UK did, however, welcome the court's call for the immediate release of captives and the imperative to provide more aid to Gaza. The focus remains on securing an immediate pause for aid delivery and hostage release, aiming for a sustainable, permanent ceasefire. Malaysia celebrated the ICJ ruling, stating it feels vindicated in its call for accountability for atrocities in Gaza. Malaysia looks forward to upcoming proceedings, advocating for Palestine's full UN membership based on pre-1967 borders. Meanwhile, Canada, while supporting the ICJ, made it clear that its support doesn't imply accepting the premise of South Africa's case. Canada emphasizes its ongoing support for Israel's right to exist, urging a sustainable ceasefire involving both parties. Criticism emerged from Palestinian-Canadian lawyer Diana Buttu, labeling Canada's statement awful and accusing it of echoing racist Israeli talking points. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez urged the parties to implement the ICJ's interim measures for peace. Irish Minister for Foreign Affairs, Michael Martin, welcomed the ICJ orders, expecting Israel to implement them urgently. Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf echoed the call for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian assistance. First, let's delve into some history of the International Court of Justice's genocide cases. In 1993, Bosnia-Herzegovina brought a case against the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia seeking provisional measures, including preventing genocide. The court later determined that genocide had indeed occurred in Srebrenica. Currently, the ICJ has 2 ongoing genocide cases. The Gambia has brought a case against Myanmar over its treatment of the Rohingya, and Ukraine has lodged a case against Russia, alleging genocide. In both instances, provisional measures have been ordered. It is important to note that the International Court of Justice has jurisdiction only over states, not individuals. Cases involving individuals accused of committing crimes are handled by criminal courts like the International Criminal Court. Speaking of the ICC, it has been actively investigating alleged crimes on the territory of Palestine since 2014, which includes the events of October 7th, 2023. While the ICJ can't address crimes by individuals, the ICC prosecutor has stated that the attacks on innocent Israeli civilians represent serious international crimes within the ICC's purview. First up, the UN Security Council is gearing up for a crucial meeting next week to discuss the ICJ's decision. Algeria has called for the meeting, emphasizing that it will give a binding effect to the ICJ's provisional measures on the Israeli occupation. The UNSC has a long history of division on this issue, with the US frequently using its veto power. Experts suggest that Washington's veto of an ICJ-approved decision could complicate President Joe Biden's stance on other nations upholding the court's rulings. In a surprising turn, nearly a dozen Western countries, including the US, have suspended funding for UNRWA, the UN agency aiding Palestinian refugees. Allegations of UNRWA staff involvement in the October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel triggered this move, affecting crucial services in Gaza. Despite disappointment over the ICJ not ordering a ceasefire, experts saw it as an expected outcome. Law professor Thomas McManus explained that asking for a ceasefire would render Israel defenseless against an attack outside the court's purview. Following the recent ICJ ruling, the court is gearing up for the next stages of the proceedings. Israel contests the jurisdiction of the court, potentially leading to a preliminary phase focused on deciding this crucial question. During this preliminary objections phase, more written proceedings and oral hearings will be required. If the court upholds jurisdiction, the parties will then submit their memorials, detailed written statements of their arguments, leading to another round of oral hearings before the final judgment. However, this legal journey is far from a sprint. It could take years before reaching a conclusion unless the court decides to dismiss the case during the preliminary objections stage. Stay tuned as we continue to provide in-depth coverage of the South Africa-Israel case at the ICJ. Hit that subscribe button and share your legal insights in the comments below.